spent about 10 years as a prosecutor, 24 years as a defense attorney. No other DA in LA County history actually has that blend of experiences. You got to look at each case individually. The individual defendant, the crime committed, the impact on the victim. The Menendez case is on 3 different tracks.
Is there new evidence? You don't reward bad behavior.
My goal is to deter criminals from committing those crimes in the first place.
Will this continue to be a sanctuary city as far as you understand? Thanks for joining me once again. I'm taking you along out into the field, and we're in Los Angeles at a very famous location. We're at the Hall of Justice in downtown Los Angeles, the cornerstone for fighting crime in this city since 1925. This has been such a landmark for standing up against crime in this city for so many decades. And this has been the home for the LA County Courthouse, the coroner's office, the sheriff's office, and of course, the LA District Attorney's office, which is in the headlines right now, and you're getting ready to find out why. Nathan Hochman, a former federal prosecutor and assistant U.S. Attorney General, has just taken the reins from the embattled former DA George Gascon. Gascon's tenure was marked by controversy and criticism, particularly over his progressive policies that some argued went way too far. Hochman's victory, with over 1.9 million votes and a nearly 20-point margin, is a resounding statement from the voters that they want a more balanced and effective approach to the law. So let's dive in and explore what this new chapter means for Los Angeles and beyond. You've been sworn in how long now?
Let's see, December 3rd.
How long does it feel?
It feels like the longest and most thrilling weeks I've had in a long time.
I'm a big supporter and very excited that you're in this job, so I'll just out myself right up front.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What do you think resonated most out of the messaging that you were delivering with the city? Because this is a deeply Democratic county. Vice President Harris carried the county in a significant fashion. What is it you think landed so strongly with the people?
So I think safety is the crossover issue for 2024. And the reason I know that is that I've talked to people across the political spectrum, ultra-left liberals, independents, conservative Republicans. I spoke to Black, white, Latino, Asian groups, different community organizations and neighborhood associations from this entire county. And when I spoke to parents, when I spoke to homeowners, when I spoke to law enforcement, firefighters, first responders, people who really are concerned about criminal justice issues, turns out that everyone is concerned about their safety. And what they saw in our county is that it wasn't working, that they had a DA in place who had enacted basically blanket, extreme, progressive policies, but progressive policies that said to criminals that certain crimes and certain criminals would not be prosecuted, notwithstanding the facts or the law. And I reject those extreme policies, but I also reject the extreme policies of the other end of the pendulum swing, which is mass incarceration. Where I come down is the middle, and I actually call it the hard work middle or the hard middle, because it requires work. You got to look at each case individually, the individual defendant, the crime committed, the impact on the victim, to determine who the true threats are to our public safety and need to be behind bars. Those are often the repeat offenders, but just as importantly, the ones that aren't. Your first-time nonviolent offender, if they violate society's laws, they have to pay that debt back to society. But that's where community service, restitution, pay it back if you stole something, or a diversion program that says that if you have a serious drug addiction that got you to commit the crime, we're gonna give you a choice. You can go to prison, or you can do an 18-month rigorous rehab program that if you succeed one day at a time, we'll wipe that crime off your record. That's what the hard middle, proportional, individual approach actually will accomplish.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I've been on the air here in LA County for 20 plus years at the Paramount lot and talking to between 250 and 500 audience members a day and listening to what they say. And when we looked at a deep dive on the polls nationally coming into this election, number one issue seemed to be affordability. And a real close second was safety and security. And it just seemed to me that that wasn't what people felt in LA, in LA County, that they felt like that criminals were not being held to account. And that didn't seem to be a priority.
That's absolutely right. Because I actually believe you can prioritize public safety, but also enact real and effective criminal justice reform in the same breath, that these are not mutually antagonistic concepts, that a DA who's got the focus to do both at the same time can get it done. So for instance, if you're a juvenile, someone under 18, who for the last 4 years you've been told the DA's office will not prosecute you if you steal just under $950, it's not a shock that we saw on social media 12 to 15-year-olds bike to a 7-Eleven, ransack the place, run out with stolen goods, basically pack them in their pants and bike out. They are going to be told that they will be held accountable. Doesn't mean they're going to go to state prison, but are you going to pay it back? Absolutely. You're going to go through the process? Absolutely. We'll hold you accountable for your actions because we want to deter you from committing future crimes. Because my goal is not to fill the prisons to the breaking point. If anything, that's a failure of the criminal justice system. My goal is to deter criminals from committing those crimes in the first place, thus saving a whole lot of victims in the process.
Yeah, and it's expensive to put people in prison. It costs the taxpayer a lot of money. And I think one of the most fundamental psychological principles is you don't reward bad behavior. And so if somebody comes in and they do smash and grabs as a gang that rushes in and just picks the store clean, but it's under $950 each one that you stop, I think walking away with no consequences is outrageous. On the other hand, I have to say, as a father of 2 boys, and I just feel so blessed that they're both grown now. Neither of them ever went to jail. They didn't get into drugs. They're both fathers now and educated, doing well. I'm glad I raised them at a different time. But while I wouldn't want these young people to get away with this, I also would hate to see a 16-year-old get a felony conviction that stopped him or her from being able to get a job as an adult for something they did when they were 16 years old and had been seduced into something when their brain's not even through growing till they're 25. And the last part that grows is the neocortex, which is the ability to have foresight and see the consequences of your actions. They've got to be held accountable, but I didn't feel like it should haunt them for the entire rest of their life as a convicted felon with no way out of that. And that's what you're talking about. There's a path back on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely. I have actually 2 boys and a girl that I've been fortunate enough to raise with my incredible wife. And it's the same message. Kids will make mistakes. They just will. You know it, I know it. Any parent out there will absolutely know that. But they have to be told where the lines are. And if you cross them, that there are consequences, and they're meaningful consequences. But this is where the hard middle approach comes to play. If you're that first-time, nonviolent 16-year-old, and you were stupid enough to steal a couple $100 from a 7-Eleven, you're going to go through the process. But that process may not necessarily include having a lifelong felony or a misdemeanor on your record if you go through the whole process.
Right.
There's notions of restorative justice, where you would actually meet with the victim, discuss what went on, figure out what the appropriate punishment should be. Maybe you're going to work every Saturday or Sunday for the next year until you pay it back. These are notions that, in the appropriate case, are restorative justice that won't be saddling you with that record. So hopefully you can learn from this mistake.
I think I was 16 in Roland Park, Kansas once and got a speeding ticket. And I've gotten speeding tickets early, when I was younger. But I had a judge that said, you know what? I'm not going to fine you, but you are going to paint the pole on every speed limit sign in Roland Park, Kansas, every Saturday from 8 in the morning till 5 o'clock for this month. And it was February, Kansas. It gets cold. and that paint was like putty. And I had to get up every Saturday that month and paint that silver paint on those signs. And that's the one ticket I remember. And I didn't pay the fine, but I worked every Saturday for 9 hours painting those signs and worked my way out of that. And then he tore the ticket up and said, okay, you're done. I remembered that. He made me get in the system and work my way out of it.
And that's the point, that if that had not occurred to you, then you would have been sent an interesting message that you could do something, violate the law, get away with it, and then maybe next time you amp it up just a little bit more. And your friends see it, and they say, well, if my friend's not being punished, then I'm going to do it too. Yeah. And that's where you get 50 kids going into a 7-Eleven, thinking that there's no problem with it.
Yeah.
And again, if we send that message to young people, eventually those teenagers become people in their 20s and 30s. The crimes they might be thinking of committing start to increase as well.
Poor sleep impacts productivity, focus, and energy, making it difficult to tackle daily tasks effectively. Tossing and turning through the night leaves many feeling drained and unmotivated. Beam's Dream Powder offers a solution. This science-backed healthy nighttime blend is clinically shown to improve sleep, helping users fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up refreshed without grogginess. Dream combines powerful, all-natural ingredients like reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin, creating a blend designed for consistent, restful nights. It has become an essential part of nightly routines for those seeking better sleep. The ultimate sleep refresh for the new year. Try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Dr. Phil and use code Dr. Phil at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Dr. Phil and use code Dr. Phil for up to 40% off. Are these gangs recruiting young people and telling them, do this, bring it back to us, you're not going to get in trouble?
Oh, it's worse than that. There used to be policies in our district and by my predecessor that would never actually prosecute a juvenile for an adult crime, no matter how serious that crime is. So what you saw is that a lot of gangs were giving the guns to the 16 and 17-year-olds, because if they ended up killing someone, they would be out in the juvenile system by the age of 25. If they were 18 or older, they'd be out in their 50s or 60s. So again, these messages that were being sent by my predecessor were emboldening criminals. They were emboldening juveniles to violate the laws, to search where the line was finally going to be enforced. That is a very dangerous recipe, and that, I think, is what the voters of Los Angeles County responded to.
I'm very involved with law enforcement, the officers on the street, and support them chapter and verse. They're not perfect, they make mistakes, and I'll call it out when they do. But overall, I think these are great men and women, almost 1 million nationwide, that get up every day, put that uniform on, and stand in the gap to keep the rest of us safe. Do you believe that your approach here will improve morale, stop the early retirement, stop people looking for other jobs, and aid in getting recruitment back into law enforcement? How do you handle that?
I do believe that this approach will help law enforcement recruit, and it's direly needed here in Los Angeles County, where we're down 1,200 deputies for the LA Sheriff's Department. We're down over 1,000 officers for the LAPD. But I think that the reason it'll help them recruit, as it will even help my own DA's office recruit, is that they'll understand that the DA now has their back. The DA will be their partner. And it doesn't mean that if someone, and I believe it's an outlier officer, crosses the law and commits criminal conduct, that we will tolerate that for a moment. I'm the first DA in history that's actually personally prosecuted. In this case, it was a deputy sheriff and a team of them that were stealing drugs, guns, and money from drug dealers. We took down 26 of them as part of a big task force called Operation Big Spender, and sent a strong message that criminal conduct by law enforcement would not be tolerated. However, I'm also the co-founder of the LA Sheriff's Foundation with my brother. And we have raised the Sheriff's Department hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last several years to get them necessary equipment. In the process, we have met hundreds of officers. And here's what I'm here to tell you. The overwhelming number of these officers, when the bullets are flying in a building, they're running into the building to keep you, me, and our families safe. Those officers deserve our respect, our admiration, and as DA, they will have my partnership.
Have they lowered the standards of what it takes to become a police officer or a sheriff's deputy in LA County? Have those standards been lowered?
My understanding is no, and I applaud them for not lowering the standards. That's in part why they are down the officers. They're looking for really good officers who they're going to give a badge and a gun to protect us, and I applaud that.
I was with the Sheriff's Department through the night, like 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, when they went onto the UCLA campus to clear out the illegal encampments on that campus during the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian demonstrations. They had taken a lot of abuse from those people, and what struck me the most, standing there at 2:30 in the morning, I said, "What's your number one priority?" And every single one of them gave the same answer. We want to get everybody home safe. Protesters, demonstrators, students, activists, we want everybody to get home safe. And I was so impressed that even in the face of the abuse they had been taking, they just want everybody to get home safe. We just want everybody to wake up tomorrow and everybody be safe. And that, to me, showed such great professionalism and restraint in what they were doing. And that's the quality that we have here. It's impressive.
And that's the quality that they are going to continue to seek. And that's why they're not going to lower their standards. Interestingly, on that particular protest issue, my opinion is that, I'm a huge supporter of the First Amendment. And if people want to go on the sidewalk and say things I think are vile and reprehensible or just generally disagree with, that's their right. I'm actually going to protect it. But when the words turn into illegal conduct, if they want to go on a college campus and vandalize that college campus, if they want to go ahead and engage in violent acts as they did in front of a synagogue, attacking Jews, or for that matter, any vulnerable population here in LA County, the DA needs to say loud and clear that they will be held accountable for those illegal actions. We will hold hate criminals accountable. If they turn their words into illegal conduct, that accountability will start today.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that message is resonating, obviously, with the voters in LA County. This is the second largest city in the United States. It's a sanctuary city, correct? And I'm not sure people understand exactly what that means. I'm not sure there's a great definition of what a sanctuary city is. There are guidelines, of course. Will this continue to be a sanctuary city as far as you understand?
So you're going to love this. In 2017, the state legislature passed legislation to make the entire state a sanctuary state. The Trump administration challenged that legislation in court, and the Ninth Circuit affirmed the legislation. Our current recent sanctuary city ordinance here in Los Angeles, again, is, if anything, a symbolic repeat of the sanctuary state legislation that we've already been living under for the last 7 years. So I will follow the law, state law, federal law. And to the extent that local officials, particularly with these violent and serious crimes, can work with federal immigration officials, that will certainly happen. And to the extent that anything else violates the law, well, I'm going to uphold the law.
Well, I've worked with Tom Hochman quite a bit. He will take over as border czar January 21st, and he has 3 prime directives. One is to close the border, where people enter through ports of entry and not in between ports of entry. Second is to arrest and deport particularly dangerous criminals to keep the public safe. And third is to work actively to locate 300,000 missing children. Now, beyond that, he intends to locate people that are in this country illegally and deport them. Are those things that are at variance with LA's interpretation of being a sanctuary city or California being a sanctuary state?
I don't believe so. Well, obviously the first closing down the entire border, that's a federal decision. And the federal government is empowered to make that decision if it so chooses. Going after criminals, particularly ones, and I'll deal with LA County for a moment, that have committed crimes, come over the border illegally or without documents and then commit crimes in LA County, we'll go after those criminals. Whether they're documented or undocumented, if they commit crimes, they are criminals, and we are empowered to go after them. Going after children that are not accounted for, we'll do everything we can to help. And that last goal is a very laudable goal. You know, these children obviously need certain services in order to exist and live here in this country. And to the extent that they need the LA DA's office working with local law enforcement to help locate the children, we'll certainly pitch in.
Will ICE agents be allowed to go into LA County jails if a criminal has been arrested and is in the jail and ICE agents have them on a watch list or a list of known criminals?
Here's how it'll work. ICE agents will be able to have that communication. But to the extent that the ICE agents know that there's someone on their watch list that is now in a holding facility, a local holding facility, they can go to a court, get a warrant for that person's arrest and transfer, and that warrant will be honored by local law enforcement. What the sanctuary state and city legislation was dealing with was more the informal communications that used to occur. But if they go ahead and get that warrant because they know that they're there, then absolutely, that warrant will be carried out.
Their concern is they don't want to try to take these people down on the street where there can be a car chase, there can be gunplay, or the ICE agents go into the neighborhoods and arrest more people, detain more people. They want to go after the criminal and the criminal alone in a controlled environment and take them out there rather than go into the community and risk injury or detaining other people.
I think that's absolutely right. And again, to the extent that they know that a particular person on their watch list has committed criminal activity and is sitting in a local jail, they can quickly get a federal warrant to go ahead and serve that warrant on local law enforcement. And I'm here to tell you, local law enforcement will honor the warrant and turn over the person.
In times of uncertainty, stemming from economic volatility, political shifts, and global events, it's crucial to work together and unite as a country for a brighter future. Amid these challenges, it's important to take proactive steps to monitor and protect your finances and retirement accounts. That's why I'm turning to physical gold and silver to help protect my accounts, and you should too. Gold and silver prices reached record highs this year, and central banks are buying gold like never before. So get started today with Preserve Gold, the only precious metals company I trust and recommend. They have hundreds of five-star reviews and millions of dollars in trusted transactions. Preserve Gold is giving away a free precious metals guide with information on how to help protect your accounts. Just text Dr. Phil to 50505, and you can get up to $15,000 in free gold and silver with a qualified purchase. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to claim this exclusive offer from Preserve Gold today. Is there a particular area of crime that you are focused on that you think needs the most attention? Is there a hot button, a hot issue that you think needs attention in LA County?
There's 6 of them. In fact, we're starting 6 task forces to deal with these issues. First, there's fentanyl. We're going to launch a massive enforcement and education effort to target both fentanyl dealers and to get the words out to kids and their parents. This is no longer about getting high. Fentanyl 2 milligrams will kill you in 2 minutes. It's 100 times stronger than morphine, 50 times stronger than heroin, and the #1 killer of 18 to 35-year-olds out there. We don't call the fentanyl dealers dealers anymore. We call them poisoners or murderers, and they will be treated accordingly. We set up a homelessness task force to make sure that law enforcement is a partner with all the social service and governmental agencies that are dealing with the homeless crisis here in Los Angeles. For the last 4 years, the DA's office and law enforcement has been out of that equation, and we're going to be back in that equation as a partner. We're dealing with human trafficking. Sadly, LA County is the capital of human trafficking in this country. It's an absolute disgrace. We're also going to be going after organized retail theft, residential, burglaries as another hot button item, and making sure that we focus on all these items at the same time.
I'm so glad to hear you recognize these fentanyl dealers. These aren't overdoses, they're poisonings. And the DEA tells us that now over 60% of all pills purchased on social media platforms like Snapchat and others have lethal doses of fentanyl in them. I mean, you have a better than 1 in 2 chance of dying if you get a pill off of a social media platform, and now they deliver them to your home like a food delivery. And there's got to be some way that we can educate these children, because so many are dying that aren't really drug addicts. They think that they can maybe stay awake to cram for finals or whatever. They're maybe a first or second time drug user, and they get a pill, it's got fentanyl in it, and their parents find them dead the next morning. This is murder. This isn't an overdose, it's poisoning. We've got to get that message out somehow.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've had the chance to meet with parents who suffered the tragic loss of a son or a daughter to this fentanyl poisoning. I met Matt Capilouto, who had a daughter, Alexandra, 20 years old, came in from college around this time of year, Christmas time, ordered one of these fake pills. She didn't know it was a fake pill at the time, over the internet, and it had a lethal dose of fentanyl, and she ended up dying. I met Sam Chapman and Laura Berman. They had a young son, Sammy. Again, gets on Snapchat, orders a pill, didn't know it had a lethal dose of fentanyl, ends up dying as well. They have taken their tragedy and tried to turn it into a massive effort to help parents not go through the same tragedies that they've gone through. One of the things that has recently resulted in all of California is Proposition 36. Proposition 36 not only went after chronic and repeat theft or thieves, people who are stealing generally retail theft, as well as illegal drug users, it also amped up the penalties for fentanyl distribution and fentanyl sale. And one of the laws is actually called Alexandra's Law. And what it does is it sends a warning to a convicted hard drug dealer and says explicitly, if you do this again, if you engage in this sale of these hard drugs again and someone dies, you can be tried for murder. So no longer is there any if, and, or buts about how we're going to treat these crimes, because that's exactly what the people who are peddling this poison, killing kids, are doing. They are murdering, and they should be treated as murderers.
Well, I'm so glad, and we're going to put a link up so people can look at this proposition. I know Dr. Berman well. She's been on my platform and talked about what happened, and it's a tragic example of exactly what we're talking about here, and sadly, it's not isolated. And this, to me, is a national emergency.
Sadly, it's not about getting high, kids. It is actually about dying now. That message has to be received loud and clear.
Yeah, let me ask you something else that we talked about with one of the things that was leveled against you in the campaign is that what you're going to do is going to wind up being mass incarceration. And you made it very clear that all the alternatives that you offer is moving in exactly the opposite direction, with rehabilitation alternatives, alternative sentencing, the different kinds of programs that people can pursue rather than going to prison or to jail. I'm very concerned about illiteracy in this country, and particularly illiteracy in our prison population. What can we do with the criminal population to bring them into the literate world so they have alternatives besides crime to make a living?
My approach for the DA's office is that we have a before, during, and after role in the criminal justice process. Before, we've talked about, which is get to the kids. You got to make sure that the kids understand what the negative decisions or the decisions they could make that have negative consequences, violating the law. But the after is what you're touching on now. This is the prison population, that 85% of these folks are going to get out one day. If they get out without a skill set, and all they have is basically a conviction on their record, the chance that they're going to go back to a life of crime and victimize more people is enormously high. Let me give you an example of a program I greatly support. It's called The Last Mile. It's thelastmile.org. It teaches coding skills to prisoners in prison, helps them get their first job, and their recidivism rate, that rate at which they'll go back to prison in the next 2 years for committing more crimes, less than 1%. And coding, in some ways, is the new literacy.
Exactly.
I mean, it started in San Quentin. It started with the worst of the worst, and it proved the concept, and now it's educated literally thousands of prisoners around California and this country, and we need more programs like that.
So these are things that the return on investment for us as a society is huge, where they get off of any kind of entitlement programs and start contributing instead of taking from the system.
They're benefiting society. So it becomes a win-win-win across the board, and we just need more programs like it.
You have a lot of things on your plate as you come into this job. One of the things that has captured the attention of the country are the Menendez brothers, which have been the focus of documentaries and some docu-films.
The Menendez case is on 3 different tracks. The first track is a habeas track. That was a habeas motion filed in May of 2023, and that's the one that you probably read about that says there's new evidence, and that new evidence is so compelling they deserve a new trial. The second track is clemency. That's a direct petition to Governor Newsom here in the state of California that basically says we should get out and you have the power to let us out right now. The third track is resentencing, and that's the hearing that's set for the end of January at this point. It's a fairly unique California statute. It doesn't go after the conviction, but it says that you need to take additional factors into account, like rehabilitation, to make a decision on whether or not you should go with life without the possibility of parole, which is their current sentence, to life with the possibility of parole. And that is what we're looking through. I am personally reviewing thousands of pages of confidential prison records on the rehabilitation point, thousands of pages of trial transcripts from 2 months-long trials. I'm speaking to all the prosecutors who have touched this case. I'm going to be speaking to the defense counsel for the Menendez brothers, the victim family members. I'm going to also review the voluminous exhibits. And after I do a thorough review of the facts and the law, then we will come forward with our position on resentencing.
Is there new evidence?
The new evidence has been alleged by the defense as to a letter that there is between Eric Menendez and his cousin that was sent months before the actual shooting back in 1989. And then there was another form of evidence of another individual that was saying that they were sexually abused by the Menendez's father, separate and apart from any abuse that the Menendez brothers may have suffered.
Has the letter been authenticated? That it wasn't written by Eric?
We only received a copy of that letter. We never received the original of the letter, and we're evaluating it. But also with the habeas analysis, you have to look at whether or not it's new evidence. In other words, whether or not a particular piece of evidence could have been discovered with due diligence back at the time of the trial. And then you have to look at that letter and the new evidence in light of all the other evidence to see whether or not it truly would give you a new trial.
Did he write that letter?
We're in the process of making that determination.
But that is something that the expertise exists to determine whether it's his handwriting or not.
Handwriting at certain levels, as you're aware, this is a copy. If we had the original, the both analysis of the paper, the ink, and the handwriting receives a higher degree of credibility than if you just have a copy years later.
Mm-hmm. And does the original exist? Do they know?
The original has never been produced by the defense.
I see. And this individual that says he was molested by the father, is he coming forward? Is he willing to testify?
The information about it has come forward, and we're evaluating that information.
Mm-hmm. Speaking hypothetically now, was this information available at the time of the original trial?
Again, that is another fact that we're determining on whether or not it meets a very rigorous standard for habeas review, which would get them a new trial.
Yeah. If it was available but not presented, does that meet the habeas standard, or would they have to come with some proof that they had inadequate counsel if they didn't find it and present it?
You could always try an ineffective assistance of counsel defense, but that would follow the analysis as to whether or not the information's actually new. Mm-hmm. So the first thing you'll determine is whether or not it's new, whether or not it meets the elements, and they're pretty rigorous to get a new trial. And if that's denied, then the defense may go ahead and look at the issue as to whether or not their counsel properly presented it in the first place.
I spent a lot of my professional career in the litigation arena, and sometimes criminal, sometimes civil. And I always wonder if the prosecutors forget that their job is to seek justice, not convictions.
I've spent about 10 years as a prosecutor, but about 24 years as a defense attorney. No other DA in LA County history actually has that blend of experiences. And when I said on my first day when I was sworn in, I actually got sworn in by Governor Schwarzenegger, which was a fantastic experience. I quoted the US Supreme Court, a decision that's over almost 90 years old. And it says the prosecution always wins when justice is done. And the quote doesn't say the prosecution always wins when you get a conviction, because there are situations where the just move by the prosecutor requires you either to dismiss or decline a case. I had a case in my background where I had a videotaped confession. Pretty much doesn't get better than that as far as a standard of proof. But there were problems in the obtaining of that confession that we ultimately decided we couldn't use it. So even though we had pretty much an absolute certainty that the person had done the crime, we didn't have legally admissible evidence to prove it. And ultimately, it's the government's burden to prove and overcome the presumption of innocence in our system. And we determined in that case that justice required us not to bring the case. And I have sent that message loud and clear to all the 750 deputy district attorneys that work for me, and to the tens of thousands of law enforcement officers who will be my partner. And the prosecution always wins when justice is done.
What will have to have happened for you to sit down with me a year from now and say, you know what, it's been a pretty good year?
What I would say would have to happen is that I'd have to have reached the 4 major stakeholders in the criminal justice system here in LA and make sure that they are on mission. I have literally taken the handcuffs off of prosecutors and law enforcement agents and said, look, do your job, we'll do our job. Then there's victim groups. You know, my predecessor had a policy that he wouldn't send a prosecutor with victim families that had lost a son or a daughter to a murderer when that murderer was seeking through a parole hearing to get out of prison early. I've told those victim groups that the DA's office will be their champion again. And then there's the public. The public, I'd like to see on 2 different levels, has a perception that safety is actually occurring again in their community. I'd love the objective statistics to reflect that. But as you probably know, when now I'm telling people that there's no effectively crimes that are off limits because of a political agenda, we're going to get a lot more crimes prosecuted. Might look like there's more crime occurring because more prosecutions are happening, but we'll look through those statistics to make sure that crime is actually not rising. Then I want to hear again from the people who are the subjects of that criminal prosecutions. That's the interesting group, the criminals, because folks are going to be held accountable again. The people that they see literally are committing crimes in front of them or being arrested in the morning and they're out by the afternoon, that's not happening anymore. And I think we can change the culture of lawlessness in this county to a culture of lawfulness.
I think the people of LA are going to see and feel the difference. I think it's going to change. It may change, actually, the migration of people out of LA where they can feel safe here. And I can tell you, as I move across this country, this is an election that has had ripple effects across the country. It's not just LA County. I think it's had an impact across the country, so no pressure.
Yeah, no, it's, again, this is the opportunity of a lifetime for me. I'm going to use that entire 34 years of criminal justice experience to lead what I have told them to be the finest LA DA's office in its history and one of the finest DA's offices in this entire country.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Well, once again, thanks for joining me. I hope this has drawn a very clear contrast between different ideologies when it comes to law and order. There couldn't be more different approaches to enforcing the law, and I hope this puts it into clear relief. I think this is going to create a lot of controversy, and I hope you guys will be talking about it. I'll be listening and watching what you have to say. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much.